instruction, golf news, equipment, travel, interviews, course profiles, and more. Your weekly fix of all things golf is about to begin. It's the Flagstick Podcast with your hosts, Jeff Botter and Scott McLeod. Welcome to the Flagstick Podcast, everyone. I am your host, or one of your hosts, Jeff Botter, and this week's show sponsored by Golf PEI. Golf Prince Edward Island is premier Canadian golf destination, boasting most number of golf courses per capita in the country with over 400 fairways closer than you can imagine, top-tier accommodations, exquisite culinary experiences. It is the easiest golf vacation you'll ever book, so book your golf vacations and tee times at golfpei.ca. Scotty Mac.
Getting a lot of questions actually about PEI in the last week or
That's
so.
good.
A lot of travel happening. A lot of people looking to book their travels. So that's great to see.
That's good. That means that people are listening to us.
Yes.
Or
among
watching
other things. Yes.
Listening or watching, or they're just interested in golf travel, and we got a lot to say about it. So that's a good thing. Scott, we have we took a little time again, but we had the Golf Expo this past weekend, and so we had to prepare for that a bit and kind of get the mental preparation. It's really what the Golf Expo is more about, is for us is getting mentally prepared to deal with the onslaught of people coming through the doors and wanting to talk golf. And
this is the Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Expo for people that are listening here. This is the area that we're in Ottawa.
Now they're
Canada.
across Canada. I mean, they have them. They had mostly virtual ones this year, but some in-person shows at various locations across Canada. Just so happens this is where we are in Ottawa-Gatineau, and this is an in-person one. Kind of cool to get back to, but we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We have a good show, another great show, actually. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Players' Championship, because obviously that is the unofficial fifth major, or the official fifth major, or whatever you want to call it.
There's nothing official about that.
It's an outstanding tournament.
Yeah, there you go.
To watch. It's going to be an outstanding tournament. Watch a golf course that's going to play probably very similar to the way Bay Hill played recently. With it can get windy out there, significantly windy, and that.
Yeah, and we're going to share our experiences of actually being there and playing it as well.
Because we did have an experience. There's no question.
We sure did.
So we're going to talk about that in the front nine. We're going to talk about the previously mentioned Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Expo. We're going to wrap that up a little bit, talk about that and expos in general a bit. And in the back nine, we're going to play an interview that you did with Dustin Brekke he's the director of product engineering for Cleveland Golf, Srixon Golf, and Zexio.
Means smart guy.
Yes.
Smart guy.
Yeah, no question. And the interview will more than spell that out for you. But
for sure,
great interview. We're going to play that in the back nine of this episode of Flagstick Podcast. But before we get to that, we want to get to the front nine topics. And the front nine is brought to you once again by Metcalf Golf Club, a natural setting, a pleasant challenge. Golf season is upon us. It's closer than you can possibly imagine. Don't let the snow fool you. And you don't want to wait to save on golf for this year. So buy a membership, join a league, get some game packs, and be ready to hit the first tee running. Visit metcalfgolf.com to shop now. All right, Scott. What do we talk about? Let's talk about the Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Expo and expos. Consumer expos, golf expos in general, as we return.
After 3 years.
3-year hiatus from in-person shows. It was really curious to see, and I know the organizers of all these shows were really curious to see what would happen. Like how would we have had an influx of new golfers. Definitely. A significant number of new golfers, albeit it not ridiculous, but it's been a lot. How would those new golfers who have never experienced the Golf Expo how would they react to it? Would they jump at the chance to go to one? Were the shows as expected? Did they bring enough for the consumer experience?
And what's their future?
Yeah.
That's the other side of things. So yeah.
And let's keep in mind, let's just preface this by saying this is opinion. This is not, and a
Right.
lot of what we do on this show is our opinion. Now, we have 27 years of Flagstick and many more years of experience in the golf industry worth of opinion. So,
there's some education behind it.
Yeah,
There's
there's a
some
little bit of
informed
education
opinion.
behind
Yeah.
it, not fact by any means. So take what we say with a grain of salt. It is what it is, and if you don't agree with us, that's fine. Send us a comment, send us a note, whatever you like. Comment on it. Be nice. We're not going to be rude to you, so don't be rude to us. But we have our opinions, and sometimes those opinions are not going to be looked upon. In this case, you might not be looked upon by the industry as favorable, but maybe they will be. Maybe we loved it. Did we love it?
I don't know. It's
not a rhetorical question, my man. You gotta fess up and answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So first experiences. We know that the Toronto Golf Expo happened. Toronto Golf and Travel Show happened, but we weren't there. We heard various things about the Toronto show.
Yeah.
So, but it was not firsthand experience that.
So we're not going to report on that.
No, we can't report on that
experience, but
we were at the Gatineau one, the Ottawa-Gatineau, and first impressions.
We've been to a lot of these. I mean, we've been to every single one of the Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Expos. So that's starting back in 1996. Yes, we're old.
Aberdeen Pavilion. I had a 5x10 back then. Not 5 feet deep.
It was
5
like
feet wide.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a little tiny plastic fold-out card table. Swear to God, Gib Patterson and I had a conversation in the cafeteria area of the Golf Expo, and we're sitting there with some people that I didn't even know. He introduced me, as he always does.
Yeah.
All the time. Introduces me as Mr. Flagstick. And I'm fine with that.
This is Gib Patterson, who owns 3 golf courses in the Ottawa area, now 85 years old, but still sharp as a tack for sure.
So he's telling the story about my first golf expo or golf show when it was at the Aberdeen Pavilion, the old Cattle Castle, they called it. Never knew what you were getting for temperature one year to the next in there. It could be really hot. It could be really cold. But I had a 5 foot wide by 10 foot deep booth. No carpet, little card table with a tablecloth on it, and a golf bag with a ball retriever, like a 15-foot ball retriever, with a little Flagstick sign on the top of the ball retriever, way up the very, very, very top of the hanging over the booth, which was by trade show standards not legal.
Yeah. So
you're not allowed to have anything above your booth.
So before we get too romantic about different things, let's talk about the difference in the timing of that in 1996 versus now in 2023, and how people consume information, and the roles of trade shows, how trade shows have changed, and what trade shows really have to do to survive. And I mean, this has been an opinion we've talked about a fair bit. And to be fair, when we had Greg Chambers on the show, it was one of the things that he mentioned as well, as far as what they need to do. Whether they did it or not, or were successful, that's for other people to judge. But in 1996, the internet was still in its infancy. A lot of people got their information by doing things in person, right? Over the phone. That aspect of it, they didn't just jump online and watch video and stuff like that. If you watch video, it was pretty choppy and terrible. So it wasn't as common. So a lot of people then, golf shows were an important part of the springtime. They really provided a service where there was a connection there that maybe wasn't available until the start of the season. Whereas now in 2023, obviously 3 years after the last one, we're now in an era where there's a lot of information that's, consumed, online, a lot of things that people would get from a golf show, as far as information they can find online. So the reasons they come to these shows is much different. And we saw that on the weekend.
So what would you say if the sole reason for, or the biggest reason, primary reason for going to golf expos back in 1996, 97, 98, and so on, as we worked our way up through shows, was information, and just generally I would just say it was information. It evolved to, would you agree that now it's less about getting information and more about getting a deal and interaction. So they want something for their $20 when they come through their door.
And it wasn't 20 this year; it was cheaper than that.
Right.
So it was 14, I believe.
So they want something for that $14 or $15. They want
an experience. Everybody deserves value, for sure.
Yes, they want an experience, and they want to be able to, a lot of them want to be able to buy a deal, whether it's at a retailer or.
Yeah, I guess there's a variety of things in there to kind of, some threads to pull. First off, I mean, if we see the evolution of trade shows in general, and I shouldn't say just trade shows, we'll talk in-person consumer shows. The biggest draw for most of them, even back in 1996, the most successful ones were the ones that had a lot of interactivity. Right. You don't go to the food and wine show to look at pictures. You go to taste food and taste wine. So that interactivity is very, very essential. And it's definitely become, more important because, again, that's the alternative for what you can't get sitting at home. So kudos to, maybe the Ottawa-Gatineau Expo for looking at things like, when they added the Brewers Alley a few years ago, as far as beer sampling, obviously the ability to test golf clubs is important. Having, a couple of retailers there that are maybe, selling off some end of line stuff or whatever, that obviously becomes important as well. The stage, the interactivity, people be able to sit down and maybe consume some information from a golf pro or coach or whatever the case may be, and get some get a feel for something that helps their game. That provides value. Yes, they'll go to the golf course booths, maybe find out some information from the golf course. They're generally looking to maybe pick up some, maybe there's we'll call it a green fee package or a discounted deal that's going on or whatever. That's obviously what they do. They don't necessarily just stand there and want to be hammered with, hey, you should join our club. Maybe for some people, I shouldn't say that. For some people, it might be important to them. It might be a case of them going there and meeting the people from that golf course. But I certainly don't think they go to see funeral homes and gutter leaf protectors and stuff like that. That tends to fill out the booths at a lot of shows, and I'm not picking on the Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Show here or whatever. Did it meet that threshold? It varies. I mean, I talked to a lot of people. Some people said, oh, well, it wasn't worth it for deals. Again, you got other people that are going, did they give away free green fees? Well, no, they're not going to give away free green fees. I mean, there was some of that back in the day or whatever. So I think it varies from person to person, but I think the evolution for these shows to be successful long-term is they have to have more interactivity, bigger things that can make it an experience to give the value. And that's my take. What's yours?
No, I agree with everything. There's nothing that I disagree with. I feel that when it comes to consumer shows in this day and age, what you're saying about interactivity and something to do is, to me, it's of the utmost importance. There has to be something to do across the board for every person that attends that show. You cannot, the one thing that I felt was really missed this year. And again, we are not digging at the Ottawa-Gatineau Golf Expo because all in all, let me just say, all in all, I thought it was fine. I thought it was great. From our perspective, what we saw, the interaction with the courses, we spoke to pretty much every golf course that was there, and they none of them were really negative about anything. They felt like they got what they expected out of it. Everybody always wants more, but I'll say this, and I've been saying this for many years when it comes to golf shows. It doesn't really matter how many people come to the show.
Right.
What matters is the number of people that you can actually speak to that come to the show. So if there's 100,000 people at the show and it's wall-to-wall people banging into each other, that's great. You as an individual exhibitor can only speak to so many people at once.
Right.
You can only sell so many packages at once. You're not going to sell a package to every single person that comes through the door. So if your threshold is 1,000 people in 2 days to speak to, then if there's 6,000 people at the show and you speak to 1,000, that's 1,000 people. If there's 10,000 people at the show and you can only speak to 1,000, it's still 1,000 people. So regardless of the overall numbers, so there's no reason to inflate the numbers and say there was 20,000 people there if there was only 8. It doesn't matter. So that aside, interactivity to me is important. There was no kids area this year.
Yeah, that was missing,
and I
for sure.
really kind of felt like, and I'm not saying there were less kids at the show either. I didn't notice as many. I don't know that that's because there was no kids area. I just maybe think that was just a product. They didn't give away free clubs to the kids, which has been kind of a normal thing for the show for a number of years. They were giving away a free golf club for kids under a certain age. There was no, Golfzilla inflatable thing. There was nothing for the kids. There was no kids area. And I thought that was a little bit of a, maybe something that should have still been there.
And that's not just a miss for the kids. It's a miss for the people that have kids that, can't sit there and justify going to it and having their kid bored as they drag them around the show, right?
So having a supervised area where your kids can be, albeit you want to call it a golf show daycare, then you call it a golf show daycare. A supervised area where the kids can go into an enclosed area with some activity, whether it's a little putting thing, a little Velcro golf ball thing, a Golfzilla, whatever. Yeah. Not about raising money for something, about having something for the kids to interact with.
Sure.
There was no bunker, but that really, to me, is not that big a deal. They're kind of messy, and I don't really know what the point of them is. But
no.
The range was a little, there were manufacturers on the range. I mean, you had your regulars, Callaway, Cobra, TaylorMade, Titleist, Srixon, Cleveland. It's nice to have those things there where you could hit. I thought the area could have been maybe dressed up a little nicer, a little carpet on the floor instead of just the cement, and the whole experience.
And that actually could have been bigger. I think it was a little tight, and I think as a result of it, it didn't show off what the Canadian did a good job as far as the team that was there, and they were working hard to do some things. But if it was a little wider or bigger, it would just have a little bit more presence more than anything. And then I think that would attract more people. And then on top of that as well, we do have the benefit of technology these days. Yeah. And I noted when I went through, and I had someone mention this to me actually last night, that only one of the manufacturers had their launch monitors on, whereas a lot of the other ones didn't. I'm not going to pick on particular ones or whatever. And the person asked in particular about, a launch monitor at one, and because they looked down and they saw it was there, and they're like, oh no, we're not having it on right now or whatever. So I mean, here's the thing. It's a hard job. I get it. It's a very difficult job to make everything perfect. But the idea is that it shouldn't just be status quo. If you want it to survive, if you want these shows to survive and thrive, you have to think grander and bigger. Otherwise, you're just eroding the same audience. Yeah, right?
It needs to be less about attrition. I know you don't want to lose money on these things, and let me just say this. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know what it costs to rent the EY Center. I don't know what it costs to do everything that they do there. What I do know is that if you're going to build something, it can't just be about the bottom line. It needs to be about building something and getting it to a point where that is something that people want to go to at the beginning of the season every year, that exhibitors want to be there, because they want to expose themselves to that demographic, or that group of people. Yeah. So in order to do that, you need to keep adding, you need to keep building, you need to keep making it better. It can't be,
you got to take a few risks.
Right? if you're a golf course, and you open your doors and here's my golf course, here's my clubhouse, here's my pro shop.
Yeah, that's not enough.
And the next year it's here's my golf course, here's my here's my clubhouse, here's my pro shop. And the conditions are the same and nothing changes on the golf course. And you do that for 20, 30, 40 years without changing anything or doing anything any different. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but it gets stale after a while. And unless you're already the top tier, we don't need to do anything else. And even at that, even the top tier, we don't need to do anything else, needs to do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always
Otherwise,
admired.
you're just failing upward.
Yeah, I've always admired, Castleview Golf Course, for instance.
Right.
I've always admired the fact that Claude and his brother, they're always doing something change, whether it's they make a few greens bigger, whether they put up some new signs like the granite signs that they have, whether they redo the layout a little bit, add a couple bunkers, like just something. And it doesn't have to be a big something. So the Golf Expo is no different. You gotta add something. You can't regress. Now, it's been 3 years. And now we're back, but you've had 3 years to prepare. Right. You've had 3 years to prepare for going back to in person, whether you're going to do it or not. So I get
it too, that there's some uncertainty of how it's going to be received, because maybe you just don't want to get out over your skis too much.
You don't want to break the bank trying to
But now that it's back,
now what?
Now what? And that'll be our question to Greg, and we're not afraid to ask that.
I actually spoke to him at the hockey rink last night.
So there you go.
Quickly, so we've already sort of said, let's sit down and talk and have it. So this podcast is going to come out. Greg and I talked yesterday, and now he's going to hear what I'm saying today. So I'm not blindsiding him here or anything like that. But these are the things that we'll talk about, and I'll get his take from his side from a cost perspective, like the bottom line, like what did this mean to you guys from a financial perspective? What did you guys think? And they're talking to the exhibitors and seeing what the exhibitors had to say. But you got to be careful, because exhibitors aren't always as honest as unfortunately. They're kind of like, some will be like, oh, that show was great, I want to book my booth, and fine, okay, and then take a deposit and book your booth. Now if you're not willing to pay a deposit to book your booth, then you really didn't think it was as good as you thought it was. So put your money where your mouth is. If you thought it was that good, pay a deposit, reserve your space, but be honest, because the only way the show is going to get better is if you're honest. If Greg comes to us and talks to us about it, and we lie and say, oh, the show was awesome, I wouldn't change a thing. Well, then we're lying. The show was not awesome. The show was great. The show was good. It was a good stepping stone, but you're starting at ground zero again. Maybe not ground zero. Maybe you're starting you're starting in a little bit, but you're not where you were 3 years ago.
Right.
So you've got to start a little bit over again, get a feel for the industry, see what they're talking, see what they're
it's changed, because as you said from the top, we have a new generation of golfers that are in here, and we talked to a fair bit of them at the show. We had people came up, and you know what, we can't deny it. I mean, here's a person I talked to, and they walk up and they're like, oh, what's Flagstick? And it was funny, because there was a reaction from a person that was next to me that was, familiar with obviously the magazine and stuff like that. And they were kind of aghast.
And I'm like, what do you mean with who's Flagstick?
I'm like, whoa. Don't make assumptions. You can never make assumptions that everybody will know what you're doing. And then when I asked the question of the person, I'm like, hey, how long have you been golfing? And they're like, oh, a year and a half. Of course they don't know Flagstick. They had never saw the print magazine.
Exactly. Right? And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I guess we talked at the show. The majority of the conversations that I had with people on Friday, which was the noon to 8 or noon to 9 or whatever.
The first day.
The majority of the conversation I had with people on Friday was, is there a magazine? When's the magazine coming out? Because that demographic was older.
Right.
Not 70-year-olds. We're talking about those that would be most familiar with what we did in print for 26 years. So on Saturday, the majority of the interaction that I had with people was tell me about Flagstick, or I've heard about this, or I listened to your podcast,
or I go to the website.
So it's the technology generation.
Right.
So that new generation of golfer is consuming what we're bringing to them via flagstick.com, via the podcast, via the Flagstick Digest. They're not, or they've participated in the Flagstick Open or the 2-ball or whatever. They're not ones that have consumed or regularly consumed our content through the print magazine.
So here's the thing. The golf show, just like we're doing, has to go to where the puck is going, not to where it's been, right? We'll pull the old Gretzky out there. I mean, that's really what it amounts to. I mean, if you're going and delving into the past, you're staying in the past.
Yeah. Well, why was Gretzky so good as a hockey player? Because he knew where the play was going before the play went there. It'd be nice if we knew where the play was going before the play went there, but that's not always the case.
But that's how you have to. That's how you have to.
Okay, so that's we've got about 8 or 9 minutes here before we have to take a break, Scott. So I don't know if you want to dive into the Players Championship, if we can tackle that in 10 minutes, or do you want to tackle that after the break and do it before the interview with the?
Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that, Dustin?
Yeah, you want to take a break and then
because I think it's a big topic. I think there's a lot of tentacles to it, so we may as well give ourselves a little extra breathing room just in case.
Okay, so just a couple more things on the Golf Expo. In general, I was happy with it. I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed interacting with people again. I enjoyed speaking to the golf course owners, because sometimes collectively getting them all in one space like that at the beginning of the year is great. I enjoyed, jumping on Kevin Hames' radio show for the first time. And I don't know how long. Usually I defer interviews on Kevin's show to you. But this one, it was fitting to be on there and do it with him and with Jake. And I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed, the idea of going over and maybe at the end of the day getting a beer sample from the, well, you didn't get one?
No, I didn't get one.
What the heck were you doing? It's right around the corner from our booth, man. I enjoyed listening we're close enough to the seminar stage. I enjoyed listening to some of the seminars that were going on up there. And I think that's a very important part of these golf expos. I think what needs to be looked at is who you have going up there. And the topics, and not get too much overlap of topics, because I really felt like maybe the topics kind of started to overlap and contradict each other. So maybe you need to kind of look at who you're bringing in. Maybe bring in, I'm not saying bring in a celebrity, but, there was a lot of successes a while back with the expo when we, for instance, brought in Lisa Vluswick. And she's dynamic. She's very great to listen to.
You got to be willing to take that risk to have a sort of a keynote entertainment type thing.
Exactly.
And you got to promote those too.
And Todd Kierstead's really good with that. But Todd comes every year. So, it's nice maybe once in a while to bring in just a different face for one year.
Different every year.
Yeah. Just something fresh. And I guess that's the point. You go to the grocery store, you don't buy the lettuce that's been there for, 6 or 8 weeks. You buy a fresh head of lettuce every week. The Golf Expo needs to have something fresh added to what's regular. So you're not going to not bring retail or manufacturers or have a seminar stage.
But you need the extra little sizzle.
Yeah, just a little something different every year. Tweak something that has been there for years to make it a little different. Move it around. Put it in a different spot in the show. Figure that part out. Get the lessons back on the driving range too. Get the PGA pros in there, and that's also on the PGA. To make sure that they've got guys and girls coming in there and doing some free lessons for people, or some charity lessons for people, whatever the case may be. That's the kind of stuff that really, when you can announce that it's there and talk about it coming, and then when it's there, it's interesting. Then that's what makes that's
a good marketing opportunity for the pros. Obviously, there was a few that participated on the stage, but you're right. I mean, there's a great marketing opportunity for the 150 plus members of the PGA of Ottawa to market yourself, because I know. Just going up on that stage when Derek McDonald was doing it, Evan Bett had been up there, but just going up there, the number of people who came up afterwards and asked things about lessons and so forth, and I was able to direct them to different pros that were near them. It was a really good marketing opportunity for, we'll call it a little investment as far as just time.
And I'd even consider the idea of, and I mentioned this to you, the idea of, and I'll mention it to Greg, is having multiple seminar stages. The one thing about the home show is that they don't have one stage for the whole show. They have multiple smaller stages within the show area, and then they stagger so that someone does a show and then they make their way through the show to the other end of the show or another section of the show, and they take in another seminar. And it's a different seminar. So you can look at doing stuff like that too, where you have multiple stages. And the other thing is demonstrations on the stage. There was no hitting net on the stage. There was no TrackMan simulator, anything, putting. If you're going to do that kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's hard to just kind of air demonstrate it. You got to have,
100%.
So, and we have had that before at the Golf Expo
where
they have had a net.
And like you say, though, that means you could have a simulator not up on the stage. You have a simulator in another area,
yes,
or a screen set up in another area, and a particular demonstration going on over there, on a particular topic. But you're right, that engagement, that level of excitement, where people can like, oh man, I can get some short game tips, of actually see it's going on, rather than just being sort of presented theory.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a demo stage and a seminar stage. So the seminar stage can be talking and displays on a screen, like what the OVGA did with the rules. You don't need a net and a TrackMan to do that.
No, for sure.
But then the other stage could be a demo stage, and that's where you've got your PGA guys and your whoever you happen to be bringing in if they're doing a demo. They're doing a demo, and there's a screen, and there's numbers, and there's TrackMan, and I think we had that. Kevin did the demo stage one year where he had all the stuff up on display, and it was good. All right, we'll leave it at that. All in all, great Golf Expo. Nice to be back. Nice to be chatting with people. Looking forward to chatting with with Greg and the NGCOA about improvements for next year, and hopefully that is the plan, to bring it back in person again next year. I'm sure it is. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue some topics into the back nine. We're going to talk about the Players Championship, because there are some things we want to talk about with that, and we're going to get into our interview with Dustin Brekke, and from all the Srixon, Cleveland, Zexio. And that's going to be cool, and we want you to stay with us. So we'll be right back on the Flagstick podcast. Don't go anywhere.
When you golf on Prince Edward Island, there are over 400 fairways closer than you can imagine. Not to mention countless miles of pristine beaches and a rich world-class culinary experience. So get here fast, then take it slow and play around on Island Time. Golf Prince Edward Island.
And we're back here on the Flagstick podcast with myself, Jeff Botter, and this guy, Scott McLeod. So we didn't get to everything we wanted to get to on the front nine. So here we go.
As it always happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes we just ignore it and move on to the next topic. Yeah. But in this case, it's timely, so we want to stick with it. So we're going to jump into the back nine, and we're going to finish up what we were talking about in the front nine. The back nine is presented by Golf Sim Gurus. Work on your game all year round, the privacy of your own home. Custom golf simulator setups built to your specs to fit your budget. Visit golfsimgurus.ca to learn more. All right. Well, we will get to Dustin Brekke just shortly, but first let's talk about the Players Championship. It is the
big event,
big event, unofficial fifth major, I guess they want to call it. The Canadian Open used to be that for a while too, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's just another golf tournament with a lot of good players playing in it on a really tough
it's their tournament, right? Yes. That's the thing. It's a PGA Tours event. It's the Players Championship, so that's why it has the elevated status, as we'll call it. Bigger purse, bigger perks, and obviously the stage is important as well, because this is one of those events that goes back to the same place and has for many decades now, and people become familiar with it, and it draws them in to pay $800 now to go and play this golf course, because they are so familiar.
It wasn't $800 when we played it, but it was
still a lot.
It was like $450 or something like that. And there was no media deal when we played it, because they were like, it
was their only tee time open in all of January.
And we were with our good buddy Tony Harris.
Yep. The artist extraordinaire.
Yeah. And that was we couldn't not do it. We'd played some good golf around that area already. And we toyed with it, but I mean, when it came right down to it, it's like, no, guys, I'm sorry, we're doing this. So
Jeffy got out the wallet.
Yeah, I pulled the wallet out and said, we're doing it. I don't care. We're doing it. We're here. This is, and it was a great experience. I mean, it's, was it the greatest golf course I've ever played? No, not by a long shot, but was it a really awesome experience to play that golf course, and to experience what they experience in a round of golf. It was worth the money to do it once. And
it gives you a different perspective on the stadium that it is, literally. I mean,
and a lot of golf courses like that, that's what people's mentality is, like, I'm going to do this once,
right?
It might not be something you repeat once every couple of years, because it is expensive. But it's like Pebble Beach. If I had the opportunity to play Pebble Beach and it was going to cost me $2,000 to do it, I'm spending $2,000 to go play Pebble Beach, even if when I'm done I hate it. I'm going to hate myself when I'm done, but I don't know if I'd hate the golf course. But it's the same thing. It's I'm paying the money, I'm playing it, I'm getting that opportunity, and then if I never go back again, well, that's fine. But I can now say that I did it. I played.
So before we talk about some of the current situations, some of the things that are going on there, let's talk about a little bit about obviously playing it. And what we saw in playing it that maybe we didn't see on TV, or felt we didn't see on TV, or what's the difference that someone would feel playing that versus actually just watching it on TV?
Well, my takeaway from it was what you can't see on TV, and the same thing happens with other golf courses when TV, even though it's you're seeing video and it's not like a photograph. You can't see undulations. You can't see movement of the fairways and the greens. There's things that you can't see unless you're playing it. You can't see on some of those par threes how hitting it to one spot and it is ridiculously important for getting the ball to move to the hole. And if you don't hit it in that spot, the kind of shot that you have to hit, it's like playing the 16th the 16th at Augusta, and even in the 17th at Sawgrass. When you play the 17th at Sawgrass and you see it on TV, you don't see as often the shot from the player's perspective, which is a level shot. The tee deck and the green are basically at the same level. So what you see is a video shot, and it's usually from an angle overhead, where it's elevated a little bit, or it's from a different angle. So you don't get that perception. When you're looking at that green, you're basically standing there on the tee. You're looking at the wall around the green. You really don't see the green that well.
You don't get the depth perception.
No,
right?
Absolutely not. Exactly. So that looks like even though that green is probably a lot bigger than it's like it's not wooden sticks. It's that green is fairly large. But from the tee,
you can't see that.
You can't see that. It looks like
it's like an
no green at all.
Infinity green or infinity pool, because it's basically just you're right. It's not like it's angled towards you.
Exactly. So I'd say that from a player's perspective, what you see on TV and what you see in real life, that's one of the things that is a takeaway. Is that you don't see what they see. And I would say that imparts a little bit of a doubt factor, because you don't know. So
so it's almost like, because it is level, it's almost like having it above your head. So it's like going and playing a green. If people want to relate it this way, go to a golf course, play a green that's 40 feet above your head, and then basically just down there aiming and hoping it lands on the green. But now you're doing that with a lake in front of you. And then I would say the other thing that people don't really get a feel from, and even though they talk about it a lot on the broadcast, but until you're standing on that tee and you can look over the flag on 16, you see it going one way, and the flag on 18 is going another way, and you're standing there ready to hit your shot on 17, and that wind swirling all over the place. You don't know that until you're actually standing there and getting ready to hit that. So I would say the immersion of that experience, while they're trying to obviously relay that in the broadcast more and more and give the feel of that, you're right, they don't get that sense of that unless you're actually,
and that's a tough shot. That's a tough shot when it's windy, because that's a green that you can't traditionally bring the ball in low.
Oh no, not at all.
Because it'll skip right off that green depending on the pin position, or you've got to be dead perfect how you bring it in low to get a lot of spin on to stop it. So you've got to bring it in with some height. And then that in itself is like, okay, well, now I've got to throw this thing up in the air. And I have no idea what the wind's going to do with it. So you're trying to shoot at the middle of the green, but if you're off by even 4 or 5 feet on your aim, you're done.
And as people have seen, even the middle of the green's not safe as far as from a putting perspective, because obviously you have the two drop offs on the front and the right side, and those are become difficult two putts from that top, even though it's safe. But you're right. I mean, do you think it's a good hole, a gimmick hole? Is it good to have it one time on a golf course? Is it appropriate for a big tournament?
I say it's a good hole, but my take on Sawgrass in particular is that is about the finish. That's not about the one hole. So to me, that's about 16, 17, and 18.
Yes.
Yeah. If that were just 17 on the golf course and there was nothing else around it, then I'd say, maybe it's a little gimmicky. But you put 17, it's like it's about the tee shot on 16, setting up the approach on 16, which can be like a lock eagle or a guaranteed birdie. But then it's after you finish that, it's the walk from the 16 green around the lake, staring at that the whole time.
Right.
And then playing that hole and then leaving there, hopefully getting your par, which I did, by the way, and walking to the 18th tee and then looking at that tee shot and going, okay, this is going right. Because it isn't going to go left. Like seriously, left. I mean, I don't know how far right I hit it, but I know it was significantly right. And I mean, that became a 3-shot par 4. Yeah, as soon as I hit the ball. So for those guys, it's the same thing. Although they hit it a lot further, because if the further right you hit it, the more the water comes into play on the second shot. Because now you've got to hit it back to the left. And there's nothing but water there. So that's, to me, that's about the sequence of 16, 17, and 18.
I'd agree. I'd say it's a cumulative test of nerves. Yeah. Right? It's putting in there. And I mean, a lot of the other holes require a lot of precision, a lot of thought for the particular shots, which, that's why I appreciate the golf course. And I don't think it's too gimmicky, but, you're not going to play it every single day. No. But then it basically says, okay, here's your gut check down at the end. And, I guess if 17 was, 180 yards long or 190, yeah, I would say that becomes a gimmick. But, being the fact that it's a wedge or 9-iron or whatever the case may be, I think that's okay as far as the size of it. So I'm entertained by it. So I don't want to be the guy making 10. No, but I think it obviously, it serves its role. Do I think it's I saw a story talking about it being an iconic hole. Well, it's okay.
But iconic because of but it's an island green.
Yeah. But it's not that it is one of the best holes in the world.
No, I mean, it's like the 12th hole. It's having a 12th hole at Augusta without 11 and 13 around it. I mean, that's a tough par 3. It's a nice par 3. It's a challenging par 3, but you put 11 and 12 around it, and that's a stretch of holes that can make or break a golf tournament right there. Because you could spit up on yourself on 11, and then what are you going to do when you get to 12 and your hands are shaking over that, and then you get to 13, you're thinking, I got to redeem myself with a birdie. Yeah. And that easy birdie hole becomes a very difficult par.
Well, and that'll be a whole other topic when we get to the Masters. Yes. Now that hole has been lengthened as well. Thoughts as well. I mean, is it a must watch for you? I mean, is an event that you generally will watch?
As far as PGA Tour events go, there are some that most PGA Tour events for me are Sunday only tournaments. I don't pay much attention on Thursday and Friday to other than just watching the highlights and seeing who's doing what. Maybe sometimes a little bit on Saturday, but most are a Sunday tournament. The Players Championship is one that kind of falls into the major category for me as far as watching. I'm a Thursday to Sunday watcher. I'm very intrigued on Sunday afternoon. I, much like the Bay Hill that just passed, I was all in invested on Sunday with that tournament. All in invested. That was exciting to see how that all played out. That it looked like it was going to be a playoff all day long, and I didn't think that Kitayama was going to even be there. After what he did, but conditions were being what they were. So I'm invested in the Players Championship. I'm very much invested. That's a strong field of players.
Including
it's not about the money they're playing for. What's that?
Including 6 Canadians, we'll say, which is really nice to have in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what about you? Are you invested?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
you got a lot going on this weekend, so I don't know, how invested you're going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to watch it. I'm traveling over the weekend. We can get to that in a minute, but briefly, I'll be heading out for a wedding for a player that we know. So that'll be a little bit more difficult to watch. I should be able to catch of it a little bit as far as the end of it when I land in Texas. But normally, yeah, I mean, this is an event I watch. I mean, obviously, I have to do certain things that I keep an eye on for our social media feeds and things like that. But on a personal level, definitely, this is an event that I watch. Quality of the field, experience going down and playing the golf course, so it obviously gives you a little bit of connection that way. You can get a feel for the shots. The fact that those Canadians are there, and the list of winners is pretty strong, and there's been a lot of good storylines here over the years. So something is going to happen, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah.
So as a result of it, that makes it worth watching for me, and it's something I'll definitely be paying attention to.
Yeah, I hope it's close. I mean, there's some good. There's some. I mean, storyline wise, you've got. I'm listening to all the shows right now talk about favorites and so on and so forth, and I don't really get caught up too much on that because I mean, it's a strong field top to bottom. Anybody can win this golf tournament, and even the best player can lose it pretty quickly too.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, certain guys are obviously playing well, so you have an expectation of that. But we look at last week. I mean, Rahm, before he started the week, basically said I'm unbeatable. And next thing you know, Bay Hill beat him. So welcome to golf.
Yeah, well, that's it. And like I said before, Sawgrass is sort of, because it's in Florida, it can get windy. It can get really windy, like Bay Hill did. Bay Hill is a tough golf course when there's no wind. You all of a sudden throw some temperature and some wind in there, and Bay Hill becomes extremely tough. And Sawgrass, you don't want the wind whirling around Sawgrass too much if you want to score. So
all right. Last note here.
Yeah.
Cam Smith obviously won it last year. Led into him, having.
He lives there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get to.
Yeah.
It leads to a very successful season for him. Wins the Open Championship. Not able to defend because obviously he's not now a PGA Tour member. He's playing in the Live League. He lives there. So he said jokingly, he's like, I live here. I might go out and watch.
Why not?
It might be awkward, but I might go watch. I mean, are we? I mean, I know there's lots of other players there, but how does it make you feel outside of the live aspect? And we're not going to get into that. No. That's a whole other topic we'll dive into. But how does it make you feel that the defending champion is not there? And does it diminish the tournament in any way?
Nope. It doesn't diminish the tournament at all, in my opinion. I don't care if the defending champion is there or not. And it's got nothing to do with live or anything else.
That's aside.
At the end of the day, that is a super strong field, whether Cam Smith is in it or not. If Cam Smith is not defending his title, I don't have a problem with that. But I will say this, when it comes to the whole Live PGA Tour thing, I really don't have a huge issue if the guys that are playing Live want to still play the PGA Tour. And I'm kind of changed my tune on this a little bit over time, and I don't want to get this to be a long-winded topic, but what I have a problem with is them going to Live and thinking that they can just come over and play one or two events here and there as PGA Tour members. If you're going to play Live, that's fine. What you do over there has got nothing to do with world rankings, so go take your money and go do what you want to do. But if you're going to play the PGA Tour, you got to play the minimum. You got to be a full-time member of the PGA Tour, and you got to play the minimum. You got to get your ranking points that way. You got to, I'm fine with it. You want to flip-flop back and forth. I don't really have an issue with it because I don't really look at them as competitive tournaments. They're making it that way, but I just don't really see it that way. Now, again, the argument that people are making, and I'm getting sick of this, the argument that people are making is saying that because Dustin Johnson and Patrick Reed and Cameron Smith and blah, 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 blah is overplaying Live, then that diminishes the quality of the golfer on the PGA Tour. And I will say this, Bay Hill Invitational, if it tells you anything, is that somebody wins Bay Hill Invitational. that you would not expect to win. Though this is a guy that's been on the PGA Tour. He's played well on the PGA Tour. It's not like he's, just came out of nowhere and won Bay Hill. He's not a name. But if he doesn't get the opportunity, he doesn't become a name. That golfer could be just as good or better than Cameron Smith or Dustin Johnson.
Sure.
Probably is already better than Patrick Reed. But the point is, if he doesn't get that opportunity, if those guys don't go to live and not able to come back and play, then guys don't get the opportunity to work their way up off the Korn Ferry Tour and play on the PGA Tour. And there may be, we already know that the difference between a player on the PGA Tour and a player on the Korn Ferry Tour, or even some of the, it's not a lot.
No.
What the difference is not just about how good they may or may not be. It's about opportunity. You have to get you can't just walk onto the PGA Tour. Like, they used to be able to get directly to the PGA Tour through Q School. And then you got your opportunity.
Yeah, and some of that
can't do that anymore.
Well, that is returning though. Some of the
and I like that. I like the idea of that. But point is, right now you've got to work your way in there.
Yeah,
and if you don't get the opportunity, you're never going to get there. Maybe you're better than Tiger Woods ever will be, but
and we can talk a whole bunch about this, but I mean, I will say that, I heard a lot of people say they watch the Honda Classic right to the end because they like the storylines and stuff that are in there. So, there's a place for everything that's in there. Obviously, certain people want certain things, and people always want the guaranteed superstars and whatever the case may be. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I'm disappointed maybe that, Cam is not there, just for me to be able to see Cam Smith for his talent and his ability back on that particular golf course. Does it diminish the tournament? No, I don't think so. I'm right with you with that. So
it's only one guy. I mean, it's one guy out of a field of 100 and some odd guys.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, I'd like to see the best players there for sure. But again, you're right. There's other storylines that could happen. And hey, Taylor Pendrit's in the mix right now as we record this, and maybe it's time for Taylor Pendrit to shine. So
that's it. Opportunity.
Opportunity. You got it.
So
all right.
Anyway, so we'll move on from that, but they're playing for a boatload of money. 25 million, I think, is the purse. 4.5 million for the winner. The guy that finishes dead last that makes the cut. We should think it's not the guy that finishes dead last that doesn't make the cut. It's the guy that finishes dead last that makes the cut is getting, like, I don't know, 54 grand or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, like it's.
I haven't checked the tide charts. I'll have them all out.
It's a chunk of money. So that's what it is. Big tournament. Check it out. Hope you checked it out when we record this and release it. I mean, it is what it is. Okay. Let's move on to our interview. You want to set this up, Scott? You did this interview. Why don't you set it up for the audience? And
for sure. So a couple of weeks ago, sat down with Dustin Brekke, who's the director of product engineering for Cleveland Golf, Srixon Golf, and Zexio. This interview was basically about the new Srixon Mark II products that are out, irons and woods, and really wanted to dive into the fact of, there's a certain growth period that's happened for Srixon, and it's changed as far as the brand recognition has changed over the years, and what they're doing with products has changed, and what they're doing as far as these new products is really interesting. So I think everybody will enjoy it. Dustin's a smart guy, and he gives us some great information.
All right. Well, without further ado, here's Scott McLeod's interview with Dustin Brekke from Srixon, Cleveland, Zexio. Take a listen.
All right, we want to welcome Dustin Brekke here, the Director of Engineering, to talk all things Srixon today, especially regarding golf equipment. Welcome, Dustin. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
Well, you know what? I've got a long history with looking at Srixon product, especially when they first sort of nodded their heads here in North America. And I know you've been with the company for quite some time. And, it's certainly gone from a niche product that not a lot of people knew about to something that has become sort of a favorite among people like fitters, agnostic, golfers, right, those making choices based on performance. Why don't you sort of start with the irons, and what's the progression that you've seen over the years with we'll call it the popularity, and then we'll get into the details as far as the engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's steady progress. So like you talked about there, we're not making, giant swings and changes in directions of our goals of, the metrics we're trying to hit with these products. We're making premium forged irons that feel fantastic, that fit that better player, elite player's eye. And we're doing the best we can to pack them with as much technology as anybody else has to, to meet or exceed in performance side as well. So I think just the steady recognition, of golf balls, you get the name recognized out there, get on players' hats, and it's just a slow build. But I think you're absolutely right. The irons have been the place where they're just received as like, this is the best of the best. These are the pure, these are the forged, they're premium. If I can play this, I should play this, type of mentality. And we do a lot from our side too, to be advocates for the fitting world, if you will, or to like support those, and are mindful in our design and like how these family of irons fit together, to suit that situation as well. So I think that's definitely the category that we've like to be a part of, and are moving forward in it.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about the family in a minute, and sort of maybe how they integrate as far as all the different irons, for an example. And like I said, starting with the irons, because obviously that's the category that Srixon has definitely become known strong for. We'll get to the woods in a minute as well, but yeah. I thought it was interesting this year going with Mark II. Obviously, if people don't know the history of using that type of terms, as far as Mark, as far as a next generation or a next iteration of a product, which is carried over from military and all sorts of innovations and different things. I thought it was interesting for the fact that in one way, it was sort of giving respect to the audience and the fact that, hey, we do good things here and we're just going to notch it up a little bit. But I think it's also a little bit of respect to you guys as well, that you created a good product and you're like, okay, we've got a really good product here. We don't want to do anything too drastic, but we want to make sure that there's innovations that are involved here. Was that sort of the idea behind it?
Yeah, I think that's a fine way to summarize it. Like, it's definitely not just brand new names, left or right. This is what you'd expect and more. Like, we're continuing in the path that you're expecting with the Srixon premium product. But yes, absolutely. Innovations to our face technology, into field technologies. Some places like the sole designs, VT sole technology, like that's staying pretty true, very minor changes. The feedback just continues to be outstanding, and we still think it's kind of best in the market. So some places hold closer, and other places we can make jumps in shape or size, or the ZX4 line that I think is still finding its home within the whole family, and we're really excited about its fit in this generation. So yeah, absolutely. I think the Mark II is calling to the fact that like it's worthy of step up, but it's like it's still in that direction that that it needs to be going for for the better player, for a pure performance.
Yeah, and just a comment on that, really. I mean, I think it plays into a little bit of product cycles as well. Consumers are obviously investing a lot in getting fit and getting their equipment. It's less disrespectful, I guess, to the ones that bought the previous generation, but knowing that there are slight upgrades, and that when they're ready to, kind of upgrade again, they can, look forward to maybe some, different innovations and stuff down the roads. But it means the clubs they've got now are, perfectly good.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you get bigger advances if you're exchanging out older product. I know this is a topic where I was listening to some of your past material, and like, it's a discussion that I'm sure many people have, but the advantages do exist, even over just the previous generation. But it's usually, and in the case here, it's not the wholesale, whereas if you go back 3 generations, 4 or 5, like, every feature is probably new and significantly new. From one to the next, it may be like, here was the focus, a ball spin or a spin consistency, or something with the progressive grooves that have been in there for a few sets, like, take some jump, make this direction better. But the sole is still working, and it's working great. It's working for the best players. Like, let's not change it for the sake of changing it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things from an engineering standpoint that are, principles that sort of, stay true no matter what. Yeah. So, there's not a lot of point. You can refine them, but there's not a point of, making big changes just for the sake of making changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we go through, naturally we're trying to optimize all the set of conditions and like everything that is leading into performance. So you need, in many ways, the inputs or the constraints to change to come out of that cycle with a new answer. And to find different inputs or different constraints, that's where you have to, like, you're learning something about physical nature of impact, or you're learning something about player performance, or, tour, or so on. So naturally, in many cases, like, there's, the discoveries are in, hey, if we really look at, multiple impacts across the face, now we can optimize this face pattern to better consider all of that versus just center face, like, what's a robot going to see? That's okay, we're looking at this different now. Now we can solve the problem differently. But then other parts, if that input doesn't change, then your solution's going to stay the same too. So, like, don't, if you just end up with a new solution kind of with nothing driving it, you're probably making a wrong change or something too quick for, for marketing, or trying to swing to do what somebody else is doing, or so on.
Now, within the family, I mean, we talked a little bit, you mentioned the ZX4 and it finding its place. One of the ways to address different needs for different golfers is not just to, innovate within one club, because obviously it has limitations as far as who it can address, but adding something like a product like the ZX4, and then, having that family of irons, that does a lot of things for you guys in your ability to reach out to a different golfer, a different audience, correct?
Yeah. And I think there's a fine line that's, we're walking, that everybody's walking for. You'd want to have a million different product offerings, right? Like,
Sure.
Here's one is like exactly to this person, that's the fitting situation, but even just in like a head, a club head design, or a face pat, or whatever it is, you would want to optimize that to everything. But where the science, where the innovation really comes in is like, yeah, how do we group, those different categories together, and how do we, like, create solutions that's, going to be specific for this type of player, or, a wide range. And having multiple iron lines definitely helps us broaden that, and allows us to make, the best for this range of abilities, like this range of swing types, or this, specific kind of eye or just experience level. But the other side of it becomes, like, the challenge is getting the consumers aware of these differences, and actually understanding where's the right place for them, and investing their time to find the best solution. And there's definitely a lot of work on that, and that, the products can't do on their own.
Let's talk a little bit directly about the technology, which is, obviously being an engineer, I'm sure that's something more exciting for you. But let's talk a little bit about Pure Frame and Mainframe, and how they enhance the golf clubs that you guys are producing.
Yeah, well, starting with Pure Frame in the ZX7 Mark II, that's paying attention to the face's vibration response at impact. So a pure blade, if you will, is going to be thicker and have more meat behind the ball, but naturally it's not able to distribute that mass and help with any type of forgiveness. So that's where the pocket cavity, that, shallow or very deep cavities have spawned out from that, many generations ago. But what this Pure Frame technology is able to do is to look at, like, okay, here's how the face vibrates under those impacts on a forge. Like, where can we put mass, correctly bring it to the center, but, only as much as necessary to still keep, some weight distribution and a good balance of forgiveness and that feel. So with that Pure Frame technology in Mark II, we're able to get that vibration response, that feel, to match where a traditional pure blade would be, but still in the, the shallow, it's certainly still a better player, but in that, like, pocket cavity design that allows for some weight distribution and some forgiveness.
Now, when we look at the designs and some of the features of them, one thing that I sort of note, but maybe, the average golfer doesn't really look at, when you start to look at things like the progressive grooves, again,
Yeah.
the average consumer is going to pull the club off the shelf, look at it, not really understand how it's maybe going to help their performance. But, having that progression of a difference in the grooves will obviously have some performance impacts. Can you address maybe a little bit why you guys have done what you've done in the progressive grooves, and what impact it would make for the average golfer, or any golfer, really?
Yeah, it's definitely for any golfer in this case. So that's a technology that, goes across all the product lines, and isn't, specific to a better player. And what it's really doing is it's allowing a couple different things. The impacts as loft changes is dramatically different. The amount of distance and, coiling, if you will, that a golf ball like does while it's on a face and impact is different whether a wedge is glancing under it or a 3-iron is kind of blowing right into it. And so researching and understanding that performance, and then specifically once you put grass into the mix and it has to wick through the grooves, it's essentially impossible for one geometry to like be the best version in all cases. So the progressive grooves allows us to, in the higher lofts, make them closer, more wedge-like, more targeting spin consistency. You're actually, in that 8-iron and up, you're trying to land, you're trying to stop. You're trying to do that for all of them, but like those are your approach shots where you're really wanting to, those are your scoring shots, and to have consistency in that that ball flight, but also where like distance isn't as important. And on the long irons, spacing the grooves out, making them wider, that allows us to focus a little more on the face's response for ball speed. And it just doesn't have to, it's not the same glancing blow, like trying to maximize spin situation. So we can give a little more focus to like helping players maintain distance and like maintain your gapping, because it's extremely common, for your 5 to 4 to 3, like you start losing those gaps. You start to lose that distance and control. So it can just be a difference in objectives of what, how the faces are supposed to perform. And I think, to your first point, talking about consumers, like not necessarily even noticing or seeing it, like that's exactly what we want, to be honest. Like in this particular scenario of like difference in grooves, our concern would be, hey, the player, is he going to be worried that a 7-iron and an 8-iron, like, he can see a difference in pitch, and like one has, X number of grooves on the face and the other has 2 more than that. Like, is he going to think, hey, these don't go together? And so being also mindful of that face finish, appearance, whole set matching, like we're not creating confusion while also like improving performance.
Yeah, I think these are the fascinating details that, maybe consumers don't take into account when they see the progressions of golf clubs out there and go, oh, it's just another club and they're just doing, nothing and just
Right.
rebadging something, right? Last thing, as far as irons, before we move on to the woods, which I'm really intrigued by, particular challenges these days with, the market is changing a little bit as far as the demographics of the golfers that are out there. Products are changing. You guys know, from a golf ball standpoint, there's different requirements and people have different expectations of products. What do you find personally as an engineer that has changed over the years that has become, the challenge, I guess, in designing irons?
Well, I think the challenge, to try to answer that, would be, especially in a Srixon product where it's so, it has a staple appearance, right? Like it has a target that it's trying to meet, and these premium forged, better player irons. Like the challenge is more on the design side, if you will, and like communicating technologies. Like I feel like, talking to the grooves or mainframe and pure frame, like we're still finding ways to pack in performance, but to find the right mix of communicating, in the product, but at the same time, not like losing the thread of what the product, high level is trying to communicate to the player. And so really finding the opportunities to do that. And when it is purely hidden, how do we make sure the player knows about it? Not just to get credit, but so like they know,
sure,
to learn or how to use it, or that it's available, and to take advantage of it and to upgrade their game. But yeah, when the target is when the player is looking for, like, I just want, that most shelf pop blingiest, like expensive looking products, like, sometimes that it can be a challenge. Like that runway, like, sometimes feels like it can only go so far, but I think our designers do a great job to continue to also, fight that challenge and, say, here, this is, how we're incorporating the new technology, and we're able to make it look fantastic and still meet all these objectives, and but still look like a next generation.
Yeah, I think one thing, just from an opinion standpoint, is I don't think the shelf appeal has waned for you guys over the years. It's remained
Yeah.
consistent, and I don't see a lot of consumers looking at the back of a club when it gets introduced, which obviously we know happens on the internet, and go, "Ooh, I don't like the look of that." That's usually not the case. All
Yeah.
right, getting over to the woods now. I mean, I think this is a really intriguing category for you guys, because I look at it as sort of like, those early days of Srixon irons where people didn't really know much about them from a performance standpoint, playability standpoint. Maybe we're hesitant to get them in their golf bags, but progressively we're seeing more and more play of the woods, not only, on a professional tours, but, consumers as well. And they're going, okay, the irons are great. Let's give the woods a chance. What's been the challenge for you guys
Yeah.
there, and what features do you think you bring to the game with the new Mark II models?
I think I think everything you said is absolutely correct. And I think what it where it really had to start is like you have to be, competitive or above. Like you have to have ball speed, you have to have distance. Like you can't have a new shiny bell and whistle and you can't just have an offering and it's going to do fine. And I think our last couple generations with Mark One, with 785, like have really shown, at the elite level and then flown down below, like, our technologies are in there to, have as good or better or best ball speed. Like we're getting, clubs switched into the bag and the highest level of players. You have to pass that test. Like it, otherwise it's, is a non-starter. And so I think the biggest thing for the brand in the last generations, like is passing that, is showing like, hey, yes, we are in the same category. Like there's no reason to be ignored. The technology's in there, the performance is in there, and it's time to be considered. And then that does take a slow build, I think, to your point. And I think the irons is a great example of that. And hopefully we're on a similar build up, like you said. But definitely have major winners in the product at this point. Like we have success out there, and I think it's starting to, not that it directly flows down from that necessarily, it does for many players, but or people or perceptions, but it's that same. It's starting to recognize, it's seeing that it's performing when you're testing it in your fitting environment, and it's building up that fitting experience, like building their confidence of the best fitters in the world. Like this product, you give it to a player, it's not going to lose this test. In fact, it's going to win it, or it's going to win this case or this case. And it each just, dominoes on top of itself to grow, exponentially, hopefully.
How hard is that, though, from an engineering standpoint, when you're sitting there knowing that your product tests well and you've done a lot of great
Yeah.
work on it, and then it maybe doesn't get the respect it deserves, and it, it can easily compete?
Yeah. No, I think definitely have to remind yourself, constantly of that perception. Like this is a slow build, and it's, but there's stress with it, right? Because it can be like, we can't turn it off now. Like it's got to do that and even more. Like the momentum's now. Like any, hiccup, any hurdle, a bad offering is going to kind of really start you over. Whereas, once you're a key player out there and you can afford to, well, that one wasn't great, but the last 12 generations have been doing what they needed to do. So it's, from my standpoint, it's that similar to like that startup type of mentality. Like we have the product, we know we have the product, we know we're going to continue to have it because we're with the brand, with the image, with our intentions. Like we're not going to lose track of what our objectives are. But so to stay persistent with that while it builds until it starts to get enough momentum of its own.
One thing I don't think a lot of people, kind of maybe know or respect enough is the fact that, you're part of a large company that's, has a group that is not just, in North America, obviously, Japan
Right.
and everything. Yet, what advantages do you think that network gives you guys from a design and planning standpoint? Because you can reach into a lot of reserves. There's a lot more depth there. Again, if people are all of a sudden just became familiar with Srixon, in the last 15 years, but there's a
Right.
huge depth within that company, you know, with Dunlop and all the heritage of your other sides, XCO, Cleveland, everything else.
Right.
What advantages do you think that gives you guys that maybe the consumers don't know about?
Yeah, I mean, for absolutely on the R&D side, there's a whole, additional R&D department in Japan, that was existed for generations, existed for years, as you said. They have a lot of awesome test facilities out there, a lot of capabilities, so we're still even, decade in at this point, years in, kind of merging our abilities and collaborating globally to like take the most advantage of our history, of our insight. But I think also it's at the tour level or at the different, markets, like we just have input coming from everywhere, right? That it becomes like, how can we really make the best product overall for globally? And I think some of that perspective is important to keep in mind. Like that is, the focus, right? Like we definitely, hyper focus on the PGA Tour here or, whatever our immediate market, but having that be a key focus, that's where our biggest opportunity for growth certainly is. But understand, those aren't the only goals and objectives, and using that other history and experience to really make a product that's going to suit the biggest grouping is the goal.
Yeah, you've got a lot of patents, a lot of material engineering, everything to reach back into, which is a nice advantage to have. Where do you think things go from here for you guys? I mean, obviously you don't have to get into specifics. I know you're probably working on next iterations or so forth, but
right.
What do you think the next big thing for you guys is, or what's your goals overall that would be public facing?
I think with this lineup and launching that low spin model in the ZX5, and I think really, in the woods particularly, seeing the opportunities to, not just have adjustability or try to, a few product that fit all, but to get that additional model out there that's being received extremely well, is performing extremely well. And so I think to build on that experience, so not necessarily saying more models or the same there, but like to understand, okay, this breakup is necessary. Like we need the performance targets of these player categories. Like there's 5 sets of irons and 2 driver heads only, all like that's not the right balance. Like how can we really break up the market to be able to get the gains and the performance attributes out of it? So I think that's will continue to be a focus for us as well as many people. And then ball speed is just always king. Like in drivers, ball speed is king. So trying to continue to research, not just to lower loft and win ball speed, but to like how can we actually get ball speed performance, within legal limits, within, as well as like we talk about better players for these product, but nobody hits dead center every single time. So adding, performance attributes while still fitting the tour eye, still filling these workable shapes. It's hard to ever imagine that a big chunk of research is not going into enhancing ball speed, enhancing that overall distance performance. So
well, it's a challenging puzzle, and you guys have been up to the task so far. So I'm excited to see where you head with this. I really appreciate your time today. I think if people go and check out the products, they can see for themselves, the work that's been put in them for sure. Yeah. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and look forward to catching up with you another time.
Yeah, let's do it again. Thanks, Scott.
Wow. You're right. He is a smart guy.
Yeah.
It's a great interview. It's nice to see. It's nice to hear stuff like that because, we like to hear about products that maybe we're not as familiar with and we need to become more familiar with. Mm-hmm. There's always the mainstream product that people are very commonly familiar with. But it's nice to see companies like, and Cleveland Golf obviously is quite common, quite popular for a lot of years, but Srixon's sort of the one that's kind of,
it's emerging. It's working its way up as far as recognition. And I think what the nice part here is, it's getting the actual engineering people behind the equipment. And their thoughts of why they're doing what they do and the equipment that they have. And, that's the nuts and bolts, marketing has to happen. There's always flash. You have to have sound bites to get people's interest. But when it comes down to it, it's like, what is this going to do for me as a consumer? And, again, there's no better guy to talk to than somebody who's actually behind the product, and is saying, okay, here's what we have to do, and here's why we're doing it. So yeah, I appreciate Dustin taking the time, and for all the team over there for setting that up. Max Christensen here in Canada, and Noel down in the States.
No, it's really good to see. We're happy that Srixon, Cleveland, and Zexio are one of our marketing partners again this year. Doing some good things with them, some contesting and things. So it's good, and I'm hopefully people kind of grasp what's being said and kind of get a little bit more insight. We're so blessed with such great product for in golf these days, and it's good to see companies like this coming up and putting out some quality product that people can give a try. Scotty Mack, great interview. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no worries. Got a few more. Got more coming.
I know, we got some in the bank.
We do.
Got a few more irons in the fire, some things up our sleeve. And that we said we were going to do that right at the onset of the first episode. We said we were going to do more stuff like this year, and kind of mix it in with the product talk and the instruction and the golf fitness. We've got some great golf fitness, great golf fitness videos coming out soon from aforementioned Evan Bett from Swing Fit. So I'm just preparing some of those videos to get them ready, and then sitting down with Kevin Hames soon to talk about some golf instruction. So lots of things coming up as we get closer and closer to the golf season.
I called it yesterday. It's iceberg season for us. There's a whole lot of stuff going on under the surface. So
exactly, that's a good one. I like the analogy there. That's a good one.
Hopefully we have a lot of announcements coming soon. Well, I know, I won't say hopefully. I know we have some announcements.
Yes, we got some pretty big ones in from our side too, some Flagstick related.
I'll be away next week, so we're gonna miss another week.
So quickly, you're going away. You're going to
our whole family
to a wedding,
little March break, going to a wedding for a young man who was a 2-time champion at the Flagstick Open, Noah Steele.
Yes,
I've been fortunate to make his acquaintance over the year and be part of his coaching team, and myself and Derek McDonald from the Royal Ottawa are in the wedding. And so does next week. So it's kind of funny to be in a wedding these days. I mean, it's been a while or whatever. So heading down there, heading to Houston, just north of Houston, the Woodlands area. Gonna play some golf.
Yes, you are.
Gonna play the little. I know Jeff's hating on me right now.
Not really. I mean, it's not.
We're gonna play Blue Jack National next week.
I'm starting to get more hate on you for that.
Yeah, sorry. So looking forward to that, and it's gonna be a busy week, but it should be a fun week. And so there we go.
I'd probably be less mad at you if you were playing some tumbleweed public facility down there.
Oh, okay, maybe I'll do that just to make you feel good. I'll tell you. I'll tell you I'm doing that.
Well, all the best to you and Derek, and of course to Noah. Congratulations, Noah. Looking forward to talking to you at some point over the summer, but joining the ranks of the married.
Yeah, and he's trying to close it out before his wedding with a win. He's actually tied for the lead at a tournament in Louisiana as of yesterday. Shot 64 in the first round.
Nice.
And a little 29 on the back nine. That's pretty good. So maybe he's trying to make a little extra wedding cash. I don't know.
Oh, you see, you might need it. Okay.
Who knows?
All right. Not sure what we got on tap for next week, but it'll be something good. I know we're going to have a couple of announcements probably to make in the next episode, but you'll see probably one of those announcements coming up very soon on flagstick.com. Thanks again. Great show, Scott. Enjoy yourself down in Texas.
Thank you. Yeehaw.
Thanks to all our sponsors this week: Metcalf Golf Club, Golf Sim Gurus, presenting sponsor, Golf PEI, Golf Prince Edward Island is premier Canadian golf destination, boasting the most number of golf courses per capita in the country, with over 400 fairways, closer than you can possibly imagine, top-tier accommodations, exquisite culinary experiences, the easiest golf vacation you will ever book. Book your vacation or tee times at golfpei.ca. Glad you're listening. Glad you're watching. Be sure to follow us across all of our social media network Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe on Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And what's the other one?
TikTok?
No, the Good Pods. Good
Good Pods.
Good Pods. Yeah, okay. Good
Lots
Pods.
of platforms.
Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube to our YouTube channel. Like us. Click the notification bell and make sure you never miss a single episode, because that would be bad. Get over to flagstick.com. As we get closer and closer to the season, can't imagine how much content is delivered up there every single day. It's insane. Subscribe to the newsletter, because that's how you're going to find out a lot of times when we post new stuff. You'll know about it first. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. Until next week, I am Jeff Botter.
I'm Scott McLeod.
And always remember, go for the stick.